Common questions is if we have this like all powerful, all knowing, all loving God, why do we see all this like violence and servitude slash slavery in the Old Testament? Like, why wouldn't God just like say this is wrong and people would follow him? Like, why don't we see that in the Old Testament?
Well, it's the rabbi and medical doctor and philosopher Moses Maimonides said that to change a people suddenly, that think about patriarchy, think about a maybe a violence-prone culture. You think of a culture that is very much concerned with tribal identity and so forth. You try to take a people, a mindset like that, and then maybe just kind of legislate new laws and so forth. I'm not saying that legislation can't maybe highlight certain priorities and so on, but to think that somehow legislation can change people's hearts, can change their mindsets overnight is just an unrealistic expectation. Think of the kind of change that takes place when it comes to maybe racial attitudes or sexist attitudes or that sort of a thing. That often takes a good period of time before those attitudes begin to change. So for God to say, I'm going to change this culture suddenly, and what is he going to remove the memories that people have of their previous culture and infuse them with new thoughts, new values, new attitudes, and so forth? Now, certainly regeneration can do a lot of that kind of a changing, and in many ways God is doing that by acting, by intervening, and so forth. But it's as though only a handful of people actually latch on to that in ancient Israel, and that's why you have Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 talking about the many people who end up being judged by God, and it's only the kind of the remnant, the few and faithful who remain, who are trying to follow God faithfully. So that's the sort of thing that takes a great period of time. In fact, one of the projects that I've worked on in the last few years has been the impact that the Christian faith has had over history. And it has been an incremental one, but it began obviously with Jesus, who comes and affirms the full equality of women, and again carrying over into, say, slaves who realize that they could have identity and dignity in Christ, who again makes all people equal, that there is neither slave nor free in the administration of Jesus and so forth. So really subverting the priorities of the Roman Empire. And as you go along, you see that the Christian faith, through people, faithful people in society, as they live out their lives, as they seek to press for moral reforms, under Constantine and beyond, you start to see attitudes changing. You see even education. You see public education for all people, not just the elites. They had that in China, but not public education for all people. You had technology that took the burdens off of those who are typically slaves or coolies and actually relieved human beings of those remarkable burdens, and technology took a lot of those burdens. And again, that's the gift of the Judeo-Christian ethic. And so I document all of these sorts of things. And so that Christians have been at the forefront of abolition, of slavery, they've abolished apartheid, the Christian impulse, of equality has been behind that moral reform. Also, the widow burning in India, or foot binding in China, or prepubescent marriage in certain cultures, that Christian missionaries have actually been at the forefront of that. And they have actually injected themselves between the colonial powers and the indigenous peoples to press for equality before the law for both sides, rather than a one-sided system of justice. So again, I've done a lot of writing on this. I could go on, and there are plenty of even atheist scholars and secular scholars who affirm this. Jürgen Habermas, Tom Holland, a British historian, Neil Ferguson, another British historian, who document this the strong foundation that the Jewish Christian faith had that brought about all of these sorts of reforms and democracy and human rights and so forth. So there you have it. But again, that's the sort of thing that is incremental. It doesn't just happen suddenly.